I am going to be talking about understanding and knowing how to control both sexes. And I am going to be talking about one particular side, so it might come off as manipulation, but it's not. And I will be talking about sex in this video for a particular reason. And it has a little bit to do with sex, but not really. I'm just using it as an example because sex is one of the most powerful energies out there. So that is why I am using it. And this will fly over some people's heads because it is kind of a deep conversation, but it is what it is. So, what made me decide to even talk about this type of topic? Long story short, I'll make it briefly. So, a few days ago, I was at work, and this guy at my job that I usually talk to, he's an older man and he has a lot of experiences when it comes to women. And he would tell me all these stories. And one of the stories that he was telling me was how back in the day, he used to have sex with a lot of older women, and these women that he would have sex with, they would put their friends onto him because he has good dick. And I'm going to be blunt here. That's what they said. He has good dick and he knows how to pleasure them and whatnot. And I was going back and forth with him. I was just like, ew, that's gross. How you going to share the same guy, this and that? And he was telling me to think about it. Back then, a lot of men was not pleasuring their women like that, and it was to a point where men thought that sex was just for them, and they didn't think that women can even have orgasms. So when he was working it like that down to me, and to have someone like him who can please these women, I was like, all right, he has a point, but it's still gross. And as I was going home, I was thinking about it, and I was just like, you know, we live in a world today where women are going through a whole sexual liberation. Men do know more so now that women can have orgasms and women are expressing their needs and this and that. It's not like how it was back in the day. But for some reason, there is still a disconnect. And for a lot of women, they do still say that good dick is hard to find. And I feel like the reason why there is a disconnect is because both of our energies are very different. Now, when it comes to our energies, it goes beyond sex, but I'm still going to use sex as an example here. Now, when it comes to our sex and the way we orgasm, women, we are all about experiencing, and when we orgasm, we have a whole body experience. Now, for men, it's not like that. When they're having sex, is all about getting to that point of releasing, and it's more of an outer feeling than a whole in a body experience. How do I know this? I am reading this book called Sexual Persona, but the book has nothing really to do with sex, although this person who wrote the book used some sex as an example. And in this book, she was explaining how men are so, their energy is more focused, more on point, and everything they do is just so straight to the point, getting to the goal. And she used sex as an example when it comes to orgasms. Men don't feel it with the whole body experience, they just feel a release. And when I read that, I was just like, and I started asking every guy that I speak to, what does it feel like for them when they orgasm? And they all said the same thing. So I'm like, that's interesting because women, we have a whole body experience, and they don't have a whole body experience. It's just a release. Women are about experiences, men are just getting to the point. So when you think about that, if one side is more about experiencing and enjoying and having a full body experience, and the other is all about getting straight to the point, very focused, how can it be possible for both sides to be in harmony when the energy is so different? This is the part of the video where I do lean more towards women because I am a woman myself. I am not a guy, so I can't really teach this for a guy's point of view. But since I'm a woman, I can speak on this side. And I feel like the best way to go about this is knowing thyself, learning who you are, and understanding your energy and how you operate. And not only that, knowing the opposite side, how their energies work and how they operate. If you know both sides of the coin, you can be very, very powerful. Now, when it comes to understanding who we are as women and learning our energies and how we operate, we have to look at certain aspects of how we do things. Like, for instance, we tend to get very emotional, and our emotions can take us into different directions, and it fluctuates. And it's not so much of a bad thing because this is more of a subconscious level due to like hormones and all that, but it can be controlled when you become aware of it. So that's one thing. Another thing that we do that is not very logical is we like to do things like getting our nails done and stuff like that. And we can put our money towards better uses, but we do tend to do things like that. We are always in a state of creating, we're very creative. So we're in a state of being, a state of experiencing, and it's not a bad thing at all. But if we don't understand how we operate, it can be reckless at times. What I mean by reckless is going back to that story that I said earlier about the guy who was having sex with a lot of women, and these women were putting their friends onto him. And although good sex was hard to find back in the day, especially with not that many men knowing how to please their women or refusing and just thinking that women can't have orgasms. I understand that it was very hard to come across back in the day. But it was still reckless because you're sharing the same guy and you can catch a lot of things from that. And knowing what I know now, because I live in such a privileged time where I can stop and think about all of this, knowing what I know now, I feel like those women, although it was not their fault per se, because their partner didn't want to bother to learn how to please these women, what they could have done is knowing who they are as women, knowing their energies, and knowing how to navigate through it, and understanding their partner and learning about their partner, they could have easily been able to control their sex life with their partner in a way. It is manipulation, but it isn't. Okay, it's for the greater good. All right, for these guys that want to get in their feelings. Okay, they could have learned how to master their partner's side, and well, not master, but just understand how their partner works, and they can be able to manipulate through their partner's energies, if you get my drift. Now, this is the part where it gets a little bit deep. This is why some men today, the very few men who are getting majority of the women, and they don't have to be rich to do this, because I've seen a bunch of dusties out here getting a lot of cooch, okay? So it's not just for the rich, but the reason why these men can pull all these women even today is because they may not know on a subconscious level, but they do understand how women operate. They do understand the energies, and they are able to manipulate these women. And these women who don't understand who they are and don't understand their power, they always fumble for these guys because they don't know who they are themselves. So therefore, these guys can be able to manipulate these women. And the reason these men know how these women operate and they are able to manipulate them is because they recognize, whether they know it consciously or subconsciously, they recognize that women are in a state of being, a state of experiencing, very creative. So therefore, these men tend to put on a fantasy world act where they're like Prince Romeo or something, and they get these women all caught up in their emotions, and women that are in their emotions who don't know how to control it, they're just, that's weakness right there, because you don't know how to control yourself. So therefore you tend to always run back to Prince Romeo, who's putting on this fantasy world for you, and it's not really the case. He just knows what you like, and you don't know yourself. Now flip it to where you are the mastermind in this situation. You can control the man that you are with. Like I said, this is not manipulation. This is for the greater good, okay? For the great of good. Because most men out here, they don't know how to master their own mind and body. They don't even bother to even try to do it. And men are not really all about tapping in and tuning to their own self. So therefore 98% of guys don't have control over their mind and body. So knowing that alone makes it very easy to control your man. Not manipulation, but it's for the greater good, okay? Unless you want your girl to go out there and start finding these Prince Charming guys that really ain't Prince Charming. I mean, if you don't like it, you should learn how to master yourself too, but it is what it is, okay? It is what it is. What I mean by controlling your man, I don't mean it as controlling his whole entire life. You just have to know certain things about him. Since guys are not in a state of experiencing and they're all about being focused. For example, gotta bring it back to sex. A lot of men out here are 2-minute men, and I know that because I conversate with a lot of guys, and they joke about how they can only last like 2 minutes and then try to get up again or whatever. They don't have control over their body or their mind per se. It's just a hurry up, getting to that point. So therefore, when it comes to that aspect, you could definitely control your man when it comes to being in the bedroom. I know they say sometimes you have to tell your man how you like certain things or whatever when it comes to the bedroom, and a lot of women don't like the idea of that because they feel like the man should know. They don't always know, okay? They don't know your energy. They're not really tapped into you, but you can be tapped into him and be able to manipulate that in the bedroom, where you can help him control his energy. And that's gonna fly over a lot of heads, but it's okay. It's okay. But you can control him in that aspect. I don't mean by like controlling every part about him, because that's not cool. But you can control certain things to where he can be in a state of being and experiencing like yourself without you feeling the need to go elsewhere, if that makes sense. I would go into other examples with that, but then I'll end up feeling like I'm like a girl with the camera or something, and turn into like a whole corno education, if you get my drift. And no, this is not the video for that, but I am just giving this example because I feel like this can help a lot of women who are trying to understand themselves, as well as having a healthy relationship with their partner. And it will be even better if the man side, if they learn themselves, they learn how to master themselves and understand the women's side of the spectrum. It will be a very harmonious relationship, because you guys will know how to work together instead of being so different, so apart, because we operate on two different planes when it comes to energies. Now, if I need to make a part two of this to make it more simpler, I will, because I understand how this message can kind of sound like I'm talking in riddles, but it's pretty, very, very simple. Understanding both sexes, especially as a woman, is so important because if you're not careful, not understanding who you are and how you operate, you can become one of those girls who end up chasing these guys that are not the right one for you, but there is something about him that draws you to him, and it's because of that fantasy, that experience, because that's just how you are as a person, and you feel like you may not be able to find that in any other guy because majority of guys are not like that. But you definitely can. And just understanding the opposite sex and how they operate and how their energies work, you can have a harmonious relationship with them as well. Well, it may not be harmonious. It will only be that if the guy decides to work on himself and tries to understand you as well. That's the only way it'll be harmonious. But you can be able to control some aspects of that relationship without trying to chase these fuck boys, if you get my drift.